Good morning. Welcome to RC Expert, a daily series from 8:30 to 9 a.m. to help small businesses. Ask any questions in the comments or hashtag QBATE on Twitter. If you need any more advice, actually join the official Intuit QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook. Accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7. QuickBooks also have a dedicated COVID-19 information site. Just go to QuickBooks website, scroll down a little bit, and then click on the big Learn More button under the heading Support for You and Your Business During COVID-19. Thank you for joining today. My name is Glenn Collins. I'm Head of Technical Advisory and Policy in the UK at ACCA. ACCA is a professional body. We're set up as a public interest body. We're in 179 countries, and we train and regulate and support 746,000 future accountants and professionally qualified accountants. You'll know that they're ACCA because they actually have ACCA or FCCA after their name, and they work in businesses such as yours. That's advice on financial reporting, advice on tax, advice on business recovery, all of those particular areas. My role at ACCA, I head up, as I've said, technical and policy. So I deal with an awful lot of the advice out to our accountants and also across the government. What we're hearing from our members, and what won't come as any surprise to you, is actually we're now looking at the recovery phase going forward. And our members are looking and planning at some of that recovery phase in light of the government support and the announcement. So we know, for example, we've had small business support in terms of bounce back loans, which run until November this year. We've got CBILS, and there's been some really mixed messages on CBILS. A lot of people haven't been able to get through and obtain that source of funding. It's something that, as a professional body, we're lobbying on, and many of our members are sharing that information through with us. We know we've got some other touch points coming through this month. We've got tax, or within the next month, we've got tax deferral and VAT. Actually, that deferral mechanism, finishes on the 30th of the 6th, unless it is extended in some particular way. So there's a pinch point there for an awful lot of businesses in cash flow. We know, and again, unless we get an announcement later on today, the self-employed support scheme is actually finishing at the end of May. And so that's another pinch point for an awful lot of self-employed businesses. And furlough ends in October. And if you've seen a lot of the commentary going through today, we know that there's some new approaches being adopted. There's going to be some new payments going through. So the announcements reported and filtering out are that the government will actually support 60% of a £2,500 claim running through, and businesses will be picking up that other 20% of the wage bill plus the NIC and pensions running through. So actually, some real changes coming through for an awful lot of businesses that we'll actually see. On the recovery phase, one of the important areas, one thing we're getting back from a whole load of our members is around the importance of business planning and cash flow. And that will be vital as we go back into work and we start working through how some of that will impact. A lot of the measures where we're looking at social distancing, when we're looking at planning on how we go back into it, will have a significant impact on productivity and ultimately the cash actually businesses will need. And it's one of those areas where it's not very sexy and it's not great, not nice to do, but actually regular cash flow forecasting, reforecasting at least every couple of months, but actually to keep your business on track and make sure you don't run out of money is going to be really important running through. And that's because credit will be in short supply. And we know that credit is in short supply by the number of lenders out there and the availability of credit. So it's important to actually manage that credit. We know, for example, on the supply chain, that actually getting paid and is going to be really, really important going through. And actually, that's about communication across your supply chain, both to your suppliers and also to your customers, and being transparent with them, because actually you need to ease that entire supply chain and credit rating coming through. Because the last thing in the world you want is to actually end up having to pay pro forma running through. We've also got a growing need for large amounts of cash, and it's important to actually start and get a lot of that planning in place. Many large businesses actually back in March, and according to the Bank of England report, went and actually obtained funding, and then they put it on deposit because they said we may need it later. So March was one of the biggest pieces of lending which went through to large businesses in the Bank of England's history running through. So if you look at their report, that was a real catalyst running through. But what we have, and if you have issues with cash flow, there are a couple of areas where you can turn for support. One of those is the Small Business Commissioner running through, and that deals with a lot of the business-to-business credit issues and complaints where you pick up the Small Business Commissioner. Another actually is the Business Banking Resolution Service, and that is businesses through to banks, and that's fairly new. That's being launched and trialled going through at the moment. So you can expect probably both of those services actually being used quite significantly. So I think we've got a few questions which have actually been asked and come in. So I'll go through and I'll answer some of those. So those questions that are coming in from the audience. So do keep those coming through. Shane from Twitter has said, an accountancy firm wanting to look after our clients not only during COVID-19 but after the businesses are allowed to fully open, what assurances can we provide them with? Well, I mean, actually, in an accountancy firm, many of them are up and working, and actually they are working through this entire period. Quite a lot of the businesses haven't furloughed any staff. They've gone quite straight into support running through. The piece of work around that going forward is actually to have a good open discussion with your accountant on that particular stuff. Zahir from Facebook has said, I'm having trouble receiving my bounce back loan after I applied. What can I do? Actually, the mechanism for bounce back loans should have actually been fairly transparent and fairly quick. So we had an awful lot of businesses reporting the fact that they were able to get bounce back loans relatively quickly through from their suppliers, the banking and the other customers. What I would do is, if you go onto the British Business Bank website, that has a particular piece and support on there, and a series of Q&As, and it gives you the mechanisms you can actually use for making those contacts and actually going in and actually making any necessary claims to actually try and get those loans coming through. It's, if you are having real significant problems going through that, actually do speak to your accountant or agent. Accountants and agents weren't included as part of that mechanism for delivering some of that through. HMRC and British Business Bank were obviously working on some of those areas. So, but do actually have a look at that British Business Bank piece and go through. And Luke from Facebook has said, with the furlough scheme extending, what variables are likely to be introduced or changed. We're trying to prepare our business as best we can. Well, it is, as we said, it is quite variable at the moment. We're expecting the formal report later on today. What has been said and is in the public domain at the moment is that businesses will be asked to contribute 60%. Then there will be the government will contribute 60%. Businesses will contribute a 20% piece going forward, but we'll also pick up the national insurance and also pension costs running through. So that is quite a significant change. If you remember, originally businesses were, government was contributing 80% going through. So that is quite a significant change. When you're looking at that, it is working out that and putting that into the particular information you actually use running through, and making sure that you factor that in terms of cash if you still need to furlough your employees. As what I would also look at is go back and actually check some of the legal documentation and requirements around that you made with your employees when they were furloughed, and see whether that still stands up and is still applicable running through. You may need to go in and alter that and alter those agreements and have those discussions with the employees again. But definitely factor it in through to cash flow forecasting. And, you know, as we've mentioned earlier, going back, when you're looking at cash flow forecasting, work out what you need and as a business going forward. And it needn't be, complex. It's what you need to actually run your business. Going back to when I was in practice, the simplest cash flow I did for somebody was a motor dealer, and I used to tell him how much he had in his bank account at the end of each month, and that was his target he used to work through, and we did everything else for him running through. So that was, it can be the information that you actually need running through. So I've got a question here from Michaela, and she's saying, are there any resources through ACCA right now that we can use for our practice that will help us and our clients? What would you mind outlining? What are they? Well, we have actually a separate UK COVID-19 hub, and we've got a whole wide range of both support from our members in terms of what they're doing and they're putting in plans. So members actually sharing across with other members a lot of their strategies, a lot of what they're actually doing and serving through to our members. We also have our technical teams who've written a lot of the analysis on all of the support mechanisms and actually other areas such as there's references across the R&D, tax credits and the like running through. We have areas on there for well-being, also contributed across by some of our members. And we also have some of the engagement letters, schedule of services that you actually might want to use for when you're advising and supporting clients running through. So I think that's that's some of those particular areas where we would where we go and actually have a good look at, have a good read. It is on the ACCA COVID Hub section. Bear with me a second. I've got Pierre on Facebook. When the self-employed income support scheme ends, what support is out there for self-employed and small businesses? Are there any other alternatives? I mean, as we said, it is, unless there is an announcement today coming through that it's been extended, the self-employed support, the direct support actually finishes end of May. The additional support out there would be to look towards some of those loans, which I dare say you've already done, or the actual grants to help the business survive going forward. But apart from grants and those loan mechanisms, there is nothing planned which would be the equivalent of the furlough scheme carrying on at the moment. That is, unless the Chancellor announce a an alternative running through today. So I think it is very much see what the Chancellor announces as he's going forward. It is unlikely, with all the mood that would be extended, but you never know. That lots of people have been putting additional pressure on and actually asking for more support for the self-employed, and actually for some of that to be extended. We've highlighted that with a few tweaks across to the system, those self-employed who actually can't go back into full-time work, perhaps there should be a separate mechanism going through for them. So we've got Gav from Twitter. What do you think an ideal accountancy should look like in 5 years' time? I assume that's an ideal accountancy firm in 5 years' time. If we look at the support that is actually coming through, and we look at the way that's being delivered, an awful lot more, as you'll all know, is being delivered digitally going forward. An accountancy firm is advice and support and adding value through to businesses. And accountants have a really great position and opportunity in the we're actually trusted, and we come out as one of the most trusted groups when giving out the impartial, independent business advice. Sometimes it's what an owner wants to hear. Sometimes it is some good news running through, but it is always well thought through and considered. That advice and that that great mechanism, great history actually sits there. What I feel is that we will see a further use of accountant services, and at ACCA we're actually highlighting a whole different range of services which members may well wish to look at and may well wish to consider as part of their businesses. So I see some of that advice being broader going through. I think there will be firms who opt to go down niche elements to cater for certain businesses, and we've seen that going through for the last few years. But it will definitely be digital, an increased digitization, and an increased use of technology to deliver the information so that actually good, high quality advice can be delivered. And that's going back to, we mentioned some of the cash flow elements earlier and how important that is at the moment. Actually, the pure pieces of information going through is not necessarily, of maximum value. It is actually looking at that and saying, okay, what if? What would happen when? What do we need to factor in? And is that form of business advice where it can actually mean the difference between a business surviving and a business failing? And so, more and more accountants are in receipt of that information, and obviously as QuickBooks users and fully using the software, you're in receipt of that information, and it's then using that going forward. So I'm optimistic very much about the firm's futures going forward. I do think a lot of firms will be agile, and what we've seen from a lot of the COVID-19 work is that quite a lot of the firms and businesses have been really, really nimble. And with that, we have had a number of members saying how many clients that they actually gained during March and April from firms that were perhaps less nimble going forward. So I think there is a great opportunity out there for a lot of digital firms. So Alex has said, we're waiting to adapt and keep up with the current times by digitising our firm. What advantage do you think it would bring? And more importantly, how do you think it could improve managing our clients' cash flow? I think, probably partly answered that already. I think it is, when you're looking at the entire digitization of a firm, what we've found and what we've been pushing out is come up with a strategy and come up with a plan to actually do that. It can be overwhelming when you look and when you hear about some of the firms who are incredibly sophisticated in what they've done and in terms of some of the data analytics they've done. But actually, whatever stage you're at, work out your plan as to what you're going to deliver and actually what makes the difference for each of your clients. And that may tweak. So, for example, if we were doing this last year, actually credit was fairly reasonably available. To try and talk to people about cash flow and the importance of cash flow business planning, you probably get people saying, yeah, I only need it when I really need to go and have a significant funding round going forward. But actually now, when we're looking at that, it is obviously, incredibly important for a lot of businesses and their survival over the coming months. So therefore, actually, you would tweak your particular strategy round and you'd say, this is what I need over the next 6-month period. I need that information flowing through from that. So I need to probably, alter my investment in digital to actually take care of some of those elements and make sure that actually I get all of the team, if I employ people, involved in that going forward. Because once you've involved the teams in that, they do pick it up and it is taken forward. And actually, the firm and the business and clients actually do benefit from that. We've had a number of firms who have operated on a pod basis, which is one of the options that people can use. That's worked particularly well for a number of them during the COVID-19 crisis. But they've been able to get those small pods working together and actually producing and supporting information going through. So many of them are now actually also looking and saying, okay, what will my firm look like in the future? Going back to that original earlier question, and actually, do I need even office space running through? Do I need the same type of traditional setup that I've had? And actually, do I need also the same type of working hours that I've got going through? So many of them are now looking at those type of areas and going, what can make a difference, both in terms of value through to my clients, but actually also in terms of attracting good talent and appropriate talent coming through. And it is what fits in with you, your firms, and your strategy running through. So we've got Victoria on Twitter. So do you think there will be a transition to move businesses online, virtual, or is this a short-term blip? When we're looking at that entire transformation going forward, we've got to look back and we've got to say where is that entire mood music running? We know, for example, Companies House are increasing their digitization. COVID-19 has only increased that with their increasing number of digital forms running through, and actually communication channels becoming more and more digital. So we can expect that running through. We know that HMRC and the entire tax piece will run more digitally. And we know with a lot of the credit reference agencies, actually it's about getting that information and some of that digital information coming through. So that's all from the an output side. Then there is the client service side running through, and actually an awful lot of the businesses quite like the fact that the engagement can be actually on a regular basis, but actually access is gained more in terms of the digital information flowing through. If I look back into history, some of the advice I used to give, I used to go out and I used to compile stuff out of clients, and then we'd give the advice. Did they actually mind or matter what was being done on their premises in compiling some of that information? No, they didn't really value that. It was the actual discussion at the end, that 15, that 20 minute, that half an hour discussion running through about the business going forward. That they were quite happy to pay for. The actual getting there was kind of a bit of a process piece. So where would you make a saving as a business? Actually, you would look and you would go, where can I make a saving and directly influence my bottom line, as well as actually making sure my clients actually get the information and support that they need running through. Then you'd look and you'd go, well, the more I can get through digitally, probably the better it is. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that you won't see organisations like ACCA questioning HMRC in Companies House as the end receiver of some of that, where some of that information is becoming really, really onerous for a lot of people running through it. And that's, that is probably a different piece and a different discussion from the discussion where we're looking and saying, would I like information digitally? Well, yes, I would. If it's safe, if it's secure, actually, I'd want that digitally because I can use and manipulate some of that going through. I've got Salma from Twitter saying, good morning. I wanted to get the ACCA qualification and officially be part of ACCA, but I'm in two minds because of the current situation. What would your advice considering our circumstances we're in? Actually, if I would look at investing and investing on that education piece going forward. It will hold you in good stead as you're actually running through and looking at advising businesses. And if we're looking at one thing from this, we're looking at the entire foundation and the ethical approach and the professional body interactions with HMRC have been very important, and HMRC are recognising that more and more. There are a number of really boring consultations out there, but some of those really are looking at what needs to happen within tax professions running forward in the future. So I would definitely look to invest in that, not only in terms of the your own education and your own future well-being, but actually also in that great reaffirmment of, I'm sure, a lot of the core values that you already hold. I mean, ACCA, we were founded in 1904 and set up very much as an open access organisation. We have incredibly strong ethical principles running through, and that is an important part of our exams. And our exams are incredibly practical. So we do focus an awful lot on that business advice section running through, which actually is paramount in the day-to-day work both you and I'm sure your teams are doing. So I've got, hi Glenn, what I find myself finding it hard to pay back the loans. What if I find myself finding it hard to pay back the loan schemes? Is there any support? As I know, financially, I'll be in a bad place due to having zero income, apart from a bounce back loan. I think that's it. It is one of those incredibly difficult positions when you're looking at that. Obviously, the bounce back loans. There's a lot of government support over the first year. It will be incredibly difficult for an awful lot of businesses. I would always look to speak and communicate with your lender going forward. actually, if you've got an accountant or advisor, speak to them. There are a number of different options that will be open and available to you. The important thing is, don't just not do anything. If you think and you're looking and you're going, this could be a problem for me going forward, it is better to actually deal with it now. There is an insolvency bill going through at the moment, which also actually will change quite a lot of the way historically insolvency has worked, and so there is a lot of support out there for small businesses who are actually in some of that financial difficulty and want to look at a variety of different options. So my advice would be, go and speak to some people. Perhaps do those cash flows that we spoke about earlier. Put those in and say, okay, this is where I'm going to reach my pinch point. If I haven't got business through here, I need to make some really tough decisions running through. But don't do it on your own. Seek some support from your accountant. Then look at speaking to your lender. Also, don't forget your peer group around you. Speak to some of them running through, but sometimes it's always best to get some independent advice. Your peer group may only actually, deliver what they think you want to hear going through. So I would actually do, follow that going through. So we've got a question on what's the difference between startup loans and bounce back loan scheme. The bounce back loan scheme is very much for those businesses that have been established and are actually currently working through their business. It is a piece of support which, as I said, runs through until October time. It is very much in terms of actually looking at our smallest businesses and keeping them running and keeping them available to benefit from the recovery phase running through. So that's aimed at those established businesses. Startup loans are, as they say partly on the tin, is for those setting up in business and running through some of those areas. So, if you're looking at setting up, actually go across to there. Look at the bounce back loan scheme if you're an established business. I suppose one thing to actually say and consider during this is, as we come out of the move further into the recovery phase, some of the credit may well become more available, and it's probably important, going back to something which with ACCA we strongly believe in, and that's getting the right type and mix of your loans. So when I'm talking about this, it's you might think I'm sounding slightly mad, but actually, a loan is which isn't used is actually an asset, because if you're not using it, you're paying for something, and actually it's sitting there unused. So why would you actually do that? So when we're looking at this going forward, is actually getting that right type of mix. A lot of people have looked and have gone down some of the finance loans, asset capital loans running through. Do look at some of those. A lot of people looked at the various forms of factoring across some of their debtors running through that particular mechanism, as well as some of the more traditional loan requirements. As we move through a recovery phase, what as you will all know, more businesses actually fail by running out of cash, not because they're not growing and not because they're not profitable, but actually they're expanding. And the quicker you expand, actually the more cash you need to fund that expansion. When you're declining, you're actually getting more cash in than you need going through. So I would always look at that and say, make sure we've got a right type and mix finance running through. So Andrew from Twitter has said, is it ever worth switching an accountant, or shall I stick to who I started with? My turnover and staff have increased over the years as we head into medium-sized territory, and I'm after more specific advice. So what would be the best method of doing this? Should I run up a tender process or just pick the best rated accountant off Google? Actually, I would speak to your existing accountant and say what your requirements are. They know your business. Actually, they may have a series of assumptions and not ask you not ask about some of your business development running through. I would look on the QuickBooks community. Actually, there are a lot of accountants rated on there, and actually do have a look at those. And you would expect me to say, go and have a look at those with an ACCA or FCCA initial after their name to give you some of that advice running through. We have a directory of members where you can find an accountant on our website. So Jamie from Facebook has said, are there any downsides of taking a grant? Will it come back to haunt me in the future? It's probably not come back to haunt you in the future, but it will be taxable, and they will be taxable running through. We have a piece of advice on there which looks at the tax elements and the support and how that will actually appear in your accounts running through. So actually those grants are there to help businesses survive, so I would look at helping those businesses survive. I think I need to almost start winding up now, so sorry for anyone who have questions I haven't managed to ask yet. Please do ask those questions. Do get in touch with the QuickBooks support team on Facebook or your QuickBooks accountant, and they can help you with some business issues. Coming up on Monday, we've got an Ask the Expert, and it's Judith Dugdale, who heads up Digital Solutions team at MHA Moore and Smalling. And actually, just a reminder what we said at the beginning, that if you do need any more advice, join the official Intuit QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook. Accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7 to support you. And from me, just thank you very much for dialing in. I hope you found it of interest, and I apologise that I've slightly overrun. And do take care. Bye bye.